Because worship is more than just music or the worship service, this means the gospel of Jesus must be the central theme of all a church does. In this sense, every church ought to be a purpose-driven church, assuming that the purpose is the gospel. Every church should be a gospel-centered church. In order to ensure that all a church does is out of worship of Jesus, every aspect of church life should make the gospel its reason for being. From children's ministry to counting tithes, from counseling to custodial work, whatever we do, let us do all things to the glory of God in Christ. It will be easier to connect the finished work of Jesus Christ explicitly to some of these things than others. But we nevertheless want to be faithful to make the gospel our center, because it will always be our tendency to drift into law mode in everything we do. In our first session, we examined how mission is meant to be an act of worship. In Christian mission, we aim to plant worship of God wherever there is currently no worship of God. But this missionary work is itself an act of worship. It is one important way we celebrate the gospel. But we don't have to be international missionaries for this to be true. Every Christian is called to be on mission wherever we go, wherever we live. Since all of life is worship, we are never not worshiping. Our lives can bear witness to the fact that we believe in God, trust God, love God, and obey God. Our lives can bear witness to the reality that worship of God is satisfying and sanctifying. But we cannot simply bear witness with our lives to a truth we do not testify to with our mouths. The gospel is to be the center of our mission. And since the gospel is not something we do, but something God has done in Christ's life, death, and resurrection, we must use words to share the gospel. You may have heard the famous saying, preach the gospel always, if necessary, use words, often attributed to St. Francis of Assisi. But not only did Francis not say that, the saying is nonsense. It's like saying, give me your phone number, if necessary, use numbers. The gospel is news. That's what it means, good news. It is the good news of what Christ has done to forgive sin and redeem sinners into a relationship with the Father for all eternity. When this news is the center of our worship, it will also become the center of our evangelism. This helps us also to see that while acts of service and social justice, apologetics and giving your testimony are all good and necessary things to do, they are not, strictly speaking, the gospel. They may help us in sharing the gospel, help us bear witness to the truth of the gospel, but they are not in themselves the gospel. As Paul says, we preach not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord. Only the gospel is the gospel.